It is 7:18 a.m. We are joined on our Newsmaker line right now by Congressman Mark Green, who represents the 7th Congressional District in Tennessee. He's a Republican. It's right now the minority party, but might change soon. Good morning, Congressman Green.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're always delighted to have you on. Crom Carmichael is here in studio as well.
Hey,
What's the big news that you're working on today, Congressman Green?
Well, we've got a bill that I dropped this week. We've been working on this bill for a little over a year. And, when I was in the state Senate, I kind of resolved we're going to get this hall income tax repealed. I wanted to walk away from being in the state Senate and say, this is what I contributed, And I try to do that everywhere I go. But in Congress, looking for that sort of iconic big difference thing, so I can walk away from being a congressman and say I had a positive impact. I think this Western Hemisphere Nearshoring Act can be that. Before I go into that, though, I will say that I wrote a bill to try to bring manufacturing back to the United States. That bill is separate. It doesn't, really impact this because we're talking about two different groups of businesses and manufacturing. But what the Nearshoring Act does is it uses Chinese tariff money to buy down loan rates from private investors to businesses that qualify. There's some criteria for these companies that are manufacturing in China, and it gives them a low-interest loan to move to Latin America. And what that does is it decouples us from China and the manufacturing there. It creates some opportunity in Latin America and hopefully decreases pressure on our southern border. So it's a win-win-win, and it addresses the manufacturing that, based on the cost of labor, et cetera, can't necessarily move back to the United States.
What are the prospects of the passage of that bill?
They're pretty high. I've had multiple Democrats ask me if they could take the bill over, and that's a sign that says they like the bill too. And they've actually been involved in the process of writing the bill. I let Democrats take a look at it, be involved in some of the meetings. When you're in the minority, you have to think out of the box to get solutions that, one, for me, always conform to conservative principles. So we're not using taxpayer dollars. I think, Democrats would probably prefer to stick a bunch of taxpayer money in there, but we're not going to do that. But they're all about creating opportunity to address the immigration issue. So from their standpoint, that's the plus there. For me, it's the let's decouple from China and decrease pressure on our southern border. And it works. So a very powerful Democrat, Congressman Espaillat, who was actually born in the Dominican Republic, is very much for the bill. So I'm going to drop it under my name, and if they ultimately say, okay, to get it passed, we have to change it to a Democrat, which is about the only way for it to pass, I'll be okay with that, because for me, it's about making a difference. It's not about, having my name on a bill.
Congressman, let me ask a question, because when I look back at the the so-called infrastructure bill that was passed, that turned out to be about 10 or 15% infrastructure, and the rest of it was special interest boondoggle stuff. But even within the infrastructure bill, it requires that all the money that is spent be spent with the prevailing wages, which are union wages, which really help the union shops. If you let Democrats take over this bill, what keeps them? I mean, you're going to have control of the legislature. You're going to be in the majority in less than a year. What keeps the Democrats from taking over your very good bill and sticking stuff in there that is pro-union? Because everything that they have done since Biden has been president, I mean, every single piece of legislation that they have passed, I don't care what even that they've offered within the legislation, it forces people into unions. So what would keep the Democrats from taking your good bill and turning it into a bad bill and then saying, well, Mark Green loves this bill because he's the one that wrote it, but you didn't.
Yeah, so I have voted against bills that I sponsored.
Okay.
I mean, when they change it if they change it to a point where I can't support it, then I'm off, right? So, and I have done that within the last 2 weeks. There was a dental bill, and they added some stuff to the bill that was, to me, just unacceptable. So I wound up voting no on a bill that I had been originally a sponsor on. So, they can amend any bill they want. They can turn around and steal the bill and just write their own. So that possibility you're describing can happen regardless of whether or not I drop the good idea, right?
Okay.
So what we'll do is fight that out in committee. And as long as it's with my name in the lead, I can always pull the bill, and then I can always vote no if they change it in a way. So the goal is to get, and we've negotiated this stuff in the process. Look, I'm not giving on one of the bills. One of the parts of the bill is, in Latin America, there are infrastructure issues, and when a manufacturing company comes, they need a guarantee of power. So I have written into the bill that we can allow the thorium salt reactors, the small, room-sized reactors, clean energy. Number one, they like that, and number two, they're made in Tennessee. So, there's a bunch of wins there. They wanted to take it off. They're a little anti-nuclear, even though it's clean. But I said, no, we're not going to do that. And, we're keeping it on. So they were like, okay, well, that's fine. Will you change the word? I think they didn't like illegal immigration. So we changed it to, okay, I'll change it to immigration that violates the laws of the United States. Are you okay with that? Yeah, we're okay with that. I'm like, okay, well, I'm fine with that too. It accomplishes what I need. And so that kind of stuff has already happened on this bill, and I'm hopeful that it'll ride like it is.
Tell us a little bit about what you just said about the room size reactors. Are these mini nuclear reactors that I've been reading about?
Yeah, absolutely. They're thorium salt, so they can't be turned into a weapon. And it's a really clean source of energy that, absolutely will meet the needs of these manufacturing companies.
And how much power does a room-sized nuclear reactor generate?
1,000 houses.
Wow.